Jubilarna stota gošća KROKODILove Kuće za pisce stigla je iz Bugarske. Sa Ekaterinom Petrovom o žutim pločicama u Sofiji i drugim zanimljivostima iz njene nove knjige večeras razgovara Milena Berić iz Udruženja KROKODIL.
Dobro večer svima, dobrodošli u KROKODILov Centar i na live. Večerašnji događaj sa sadašnjom spisateljicom u KROKODILovoj rezidenciji za pisce, Ekaterinom Petrovom, vodit ćemo na engleskom jeziku. So, hello Ekaterina, hello to everyone here and everyone watching us online. Ekaterina Petrova is KROKODIL's writer in residence, and she's actually 100th author who stays in Belgrade, so welcome. And something that is important to be mentioned at the beginning, that you are coming under the Reading Balkans umbrella, and we are really happy to have you here, because the idea of this project is to have presented authors from the region and to have one joint agent that will present all the authors that we will promote throughout these 4 years. So thank you for coming to Belgrade and staying in the residency. And I must ask you, is this your first time in Belgrade? How do you like staying here, and how do you like our residency?
Thank you to the people who came. Hi to the people who are watching. And yeah, thanks to KROKODIL. I want to say KROKODIL in Bulgarian, but the accent is different. Everyone here for hosting me and for organizing everything and making everything so easy. I feel like after this more than a year and a half of not traveling, it could have been very stressful to start traveling again, but it's been really nice. So thank you for all the organization and the hosting. To answer your question, it's not technically not my first time in Belgrade, so somehow I have this almost backwards relationship with the Balkans, I think, because I started my start as a writer. I started out as a journalist, so I actually worked for this Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, BIRN, I guess, who and their central offices are based in Belgrade. So I think it was 2006, 2007, they had a training in Palić. So I went there, and then on the way back, I just passed through Belgrade for one afternoon and caught the night train to Sofia. But it was very, I say my relationship with the Balkans is backward. So I worked for them for a few years, and then I started working for this online travel magazine called Balkan Travelers, and I was the editor of the English version, so I was editing and translating a lot of stories about the Balkans, but I'd never been anywhere in the Balkans. I had been to, Bhutan and, Bolivia, but I hadn't been anywhere in the Balkans. But I slowly, in those years since, I slowly started discovering places. I have a few good friends in Slovenia, so I go to Slovenia quite a lot. I did a residency like this actually with, I think they're your partners, Centra Multimedia. I was in Pristina for a month. I'm going to Skopje next month. It's exciting. So I'm kind of, I think, working my way in. Maybe I'll end up specializing in just Bulgaria, just in Sofia.
How do you like Belgrade? How do you like our apartment and residency?
I love it. Yeah. It's as I said, I think it's kind of a perfect, after a year and a half of not going anywhere. I think it could have been very stressful and very overwhelming to maybe go somewhere else. I don't know if it was maybe really far away or really different. I think Belgrade is this, for me, perfect combination between something that feels very similar to me or very familiar, and something that is not Bulgaria. It's very different. And I think also Belgrade has this unusual quality about it. I feel like it's an annoying thing that happens, but it happens anyway. I can't help it. When I travel and I go somewhere new, I'm always tempted to say like, oh, this is just this new thing that I don't know. It's just like this other thing that I know and I'm familiar with. And I do it, and I don't want to do it, but, I do it. And I feel like with Belgrade, what's interesting and what's nice is that I have this reaction all the time, but it's always different. So I was walking in Dolchor, I guess, and I was walking down the street, and suddenly it's like, oh, this looks like, a Madrid street corner with, cafes, or parts of it. Dawn and I, one of our guests, we went on a walking tour together, and we went to Zemun with these steep cobblestone streets, and I thought, this looks like Portugal. Or, parts of it look like Vienna to me because, Austro-Hungarian Empire. Or parts of it look like, communist Bulgaria or like communist Sofia. So I think it's a really nice mixture of, feeling like, okay, I kind of can figure things out, and some things look familiar to me, but it's also very interesting because it's, also unknown.
Thank you so much. Just for those who are watching this and they're not familiar with your work, so Ekaterina Petrova is literary translator and non-fiction writer working in both English and Bulgarian language. She holds an MFA in literature translation from the University of Iowa, where she was awarded with the Iowa Art Fellowship, and so on and so forth. But this is the most important to be stressed, that you are actually translator, but also non-fiction writer. And from what you have just said, we can tell that you traveled quite a lot. You write about things that you see during your travels, and more specifically, we talked previously about it before we started this conversation, is methodology, how you write. But before going deeply into that, I must ask you, how do you feel more comfortable when you translate or when you write? Why, not only comfortable, but what do you like more and when? If you can answer this question.
Yeah, I don't, I guess in some, as I feel much more comfortable in the skin, or, presenting myself or speaking as a translator, I think. Somehow this is, I feel like it's really my thing. As a writer, I think when I write, I somehow write as a translator, if that makes any sense. I think the two things are very, very different, and I don't know, when I'm well organized and I can do both of them at the same time, I think they actually really, one benefits the other. I don't think, I just need to be writing or I just need to be translating. But I think, writing is very, much more like all-consuming than translating. I think I can sit down and say, okay, I'm going to spend 3 hours translating, and then I sit down and do it, and then I put it aside, and then I think, it's always, things are turning in my head. But I think with writing, if I'm working on something, it's just like, I can't think about, anything else, even if I put it aside. It's, much more, I think, demanding of my, brain or something. And with translating, somebody's already done all that work of, digging out things, or, what they want to figure out, what they want to say, how they want to say it, making different connections. And then my job is to sort of, repeat that, like do a cover on that. But I do want to say that I have a problem, I guess. I think translating is also writing. I think I'm very opposed, and I have a problem with this kind of fake hierarchy that happens of, writing is this superior thing, and, translation is, not so important, or not so artistic, or not so creative. I think they are both very much artistic projects. I think they're just very different. And we're talking about, I don't know, about the different, somehow I think the stuff I love to read and to translate is very different than the stuff I write in many ways. I think I really love, as a reader and a translator, translating very, very literary texts that are very imaginative and very much based in fiction, their inventions. And as a writer, I'm very much rooted in fact and in, material things. But I think what maybe the stuff that I love to read and translate and the stuff that I write maybe have in common, I think, is I try at least to write in a way that leaves space for the reader to, I don't like reading things. I don't like writing things that are spoon feeding the reader and telling them, this is the way to read this and this is exactly how things are. I want them to, have some space to move around and to make connections by themselves and to figure things out for themselves and to, maybe not everything has to be clear. In my writing, I leave a lot of foreign words in, and then I let people either, just read over them or they can check them. In my translations also, I do that. I don't like writing that's, very like shakes its finger at you and this is how things are and this is the only way things are.
Referring to that, you've just mentioned what creativity is for you. But once you've said that you're really realistic in your writings, are you in translation as well? And what do you mean by it? I think I'm creative in different ways. I think in my writing, I try to maybe the way I'm creative is the way because I write nonfiction, so in a way I'm very much committed to writing things that are true or I think are true or that I've checked factually, but then I'm creative in maybe how I put them together. So this is one of the things that I really love doing, and people who read my stuff say that they enjoy as readers is that how the way things line up and the way things are connected. And I was telling you this earlier, the publisher actually of this book that we'll talk about that's forthcoming in Bulgaria, he says that people in the world, everyone in the world is divided into two groups. One group believes that you believe everything is connected, and the other group believes that nothing is connected. So I think I'm the kind of person who believes everything is connected, and I somehow there's always things that you can link. Is everything connected or you connect everything?
I mean, I think I think things are there for us to see or not see, and to give meaning to or not give meaning to. There's one of the stories actually in the book is about this. It's called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. I don't know if people know what that is. But basically it means that you live your whole life and not knowing some fact, and one day you discover this certain fact or that something exists, and then from then on the next day you see it in the paper or you see a poster of it or read about it in the book. This kind of like serendipity, like coincidences happening, and if you didn't find out about this fact, you would see it in the paper and just go over your head. But to finish my thought about, I think my translation creativity is very different. Like, as I said, somebody's already decided how to link things or how to arrange things and what connections to make. My job is to, reproduce this effect. And, for example, the book I'm translating now has a lot of these connections but they occur 60 pages apart, and to the Bulgarian reader that connection, even if it's separated by 60 pages, is very apparent. So my job, I realized I was translating something and I realized that this connection is lost in my translation, so I had to find a way to make it apparent to the reader, and I did that by leaving a foreign word in. So the word that you have also in Serbian, you use veresiya from Turkish. I used the same word, and in that way, made sure that the connection was obvious or noticeable, if you want to notice it. And I just note, again, about everything is connected. If we'll talk about the cobblestones, I guess. But so, for example, like one of the threads, I guess, that passed through this book, and somehow is it okay now? Yeah. Is this thread about the Wizard of Oz, somehow in the yellow brick road, and Dorothy and home. But look, there's a picture there of Dorothy's red slippers. It's how random that it's there.
I must tell you that I completely agree with you. I was curious to hear you talking about it and your opinion. The other thing, we will come back to your essays and the book that will be published now in Bulgaria. We will stick to that a little bit later, but I have two more questions to ask you, generally speaking, about your work. You mentioned that you start writing. In order to start writing, you always use the same methodology. For example, if you want to write about refugee immigration wave in, I don't know, Southeastern Europe, you would stick to one person, his hat, and you would find a specific detail that you will stick to, explore it, and get a deep insight on that object, and then all of a sudden you would develop entire story which ends up obviously in form of essay and furthermore in book. So can you tell more how did this, this, let's call it methodology of writing, came to you, or it was spontaneous? Can you just tell me a few words about it? It's unique indeed.
Yeah, it's funny that you use this example of refugees, and it just kind of sent me back to when I was working for Birn. One of the stories I wrote was about actually refugees in Bulgaria, and I wrote that story by following around and hanging out with this one guy from Sudan who had refugee status in Sofia. So I hung out with him for a week and kind of wrote his story, and from there, started checking statistics on refugees and, how people were treated. This guy was black, so there was this whole factor of, how racist Bulgarian society is. So yeah, I didn't think about that, but I think also maybe as a journalist, I was doing that in some ways. But yeah, my methodology, which sort of, I think, appeared by itself, it's not something that I sat down and I said, I'm going to work like this. I just ended up working like this, is to start from something very, very specific and tangible, and then talk about something bigger. And somehow I think it makes the world more manageable for me, or it makes it somehow possible to wrap my head around, very big issues. But I think also maybe for readers, it's a good or interesting or, I don't know, convenient entryway into something. Because probably you lose a lot of people if you say, we're going to talk about, I don't know, migration and, conflict societies. And then I think if you have this, particular object or human stories, with the book, that's the very idea of it. I start from a very specific object and the book is going to have a picture of each object, so the reader can also see it, and from that object I try to tell a bigger story of maybe a journey I've been on, a place, maybe some phenomenon, whether it's linguistic, historical, cultural, but there's always the object. And I realized with these books, so these are two books that they're nonfiction collections of nonfiction essays by different authors, and I have an essay in each one, but I'm also the translator of both books into English. So these books, I was invited to contribute to them, and this is called My Brother's Suitcase, and it's stories about migration, immigration, belonging, traveling, and when I was invited to contribute, I thought, I don't know, because I've lived in a lot of different places, so I said I don't know really how to start or where to start, and I actually found my first international passport from when I was 4 years old, when Bulgaria was communist, and I found this very specific object, and from there sort of used that as a way to tell my story. And what the passport is very much your nationality, where you belong supposedly, and to maybe question that, is that really where I belong? The other book is it's called Fathers Never Really Go Away, and it's stories about people wrote about their fathers who are gone. They've lost them. So even the story about my dad, who's of course, a person is kind of a universe of their own. I had to start from a very specific object, telling the story of, my loss, these I used these shoes that he bought, 2 weeks before he died very suddenly, and these shoes, were never worn, and it was kind of, I thought about this idea. They say it's the shortest short story, supposedly by Hemingway. I think I did some research, maybe it isn't, but there was some adverb that says baby shoes never worn, and it's, in this sentence there's, a whole story and a tragedy contained. So yeah, even I think very like big and lofty themes that I don't know how to tackle, it really helps me to have something specific to, use as an anchor. Or I had also a blog that I kept for a long time called The Ground Beneath My Feet. And I did the same thing, I would take a picture of my feet standing on some surface. And for a long time when I was traveling and walking around, I'll just, look at the ground instead of like normal people just, look at the buildings or whatever. I'll just look at the ground. And then I realized, when you look at the ground, there's so many stories contained in what's on the ground that, I don't know, maybe we can talk about it.
Referring to your blog, I would like to enter into the second phase of our conversation. And you were making photos of your feet on different surfaces around the world, and you were writing about these locations. And in your essays, you can tell that these objects are always placed in different countries, different cultures. You explore the world with different eyes that I had chance personally to learn about. And before starting talk about your very new book, I would like you to tell me what is home for you. Where is home? And for articulation, you always come somehow to this question: what is home and where is home, in one or another way, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the $1 million question for me, and it'll be the endless question of my life, I guess. And I, in this the suitcase, my brother's suitcase story, this is, I tried to answer that question for myself, and that book in Bulgaria was published in 2015, I want to say, or 2016, so 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm still sort of ruminating on that. I don't know that I have an answer. I think partly the answer is, I don't know, I don't want to sound dramatic, but like I have no home in a way, I want to say, but from a very privileged place, in a privileged position. I'm not a refugee, I'm not a homeless person, but I think there's always, I'm in Sofia, and that's my hometown, it's where I was born, it's where my whole family is, but it doesn't feel quite like home completely, 100%, because I've spent so many of my formative years, or my teenage years, my 20s, outside of Bulgaria. So there are so many important things have happened to me outside of Sofia, and there's so many important people to me who aren't in Sofia. So there's something missing. But then I go to New York, where I spent some of my 20s, and I love it, and I have memories there, and I have friends there, but my family is not there. So it's there's always something missing. But of course, the flip side, I don't want to, for a long time I was like, poor me. But of course it's not poor me. Like, what a privilege, what a great life to have, to have so many places. Actually, the flip side of that is that so many places feel like home, actually, or almost like home, close enough to home, I think. So yeah, and even, I mean, I don't know, it's been, I guess, 3 weeks now that I've been here, and, I've been here for one afternoon before, as I said, but, slowly, things start feeling like home. I have my rituals now in the apartment, where I make my coffee and how I sit down and think about things, and, the view from the window, and this becomes part of me. This month that I spend in Belgrade will be a part of me, and that is, I am my home in a way, that I carry around always. So that becomes part of, what is home for me, if that makes any sense.
Yes, of course. And then you write about home, and that is you. Referring to that, I would like to read the two actually 2 sentences from the introduction of your new book that you will tell me more about afterwards. So in Serbian, your book that will be published now in Bulgaria first, and hopefully with translation into Serbian, we'll see. We will do our best to present your book to Serbian publishers. It is called Stvarotražitelj. 44 neobična predmeta iz blizine i iz daleka i druge priče. Ovo je zapravo skup eseja. There is no place like home. Izgovorena 3 puta kao magične reči, Dorotina replika u filmu Čarobnjak iz Oza je jednako poznata kao put do Smaragdnog grada, popločan žutim ciglama kojim ona hoda u rubin crvenim cipelama. Tačno je, ali ne baš sasvim, da ne postoji mesto kao što je dom. Za mnoge ljude, uključujući i mene, dom je daleko od nedvosmislenog koncepta. Može se istovremeno kretati ili biti na nekoliko mesta, protezati se između različitih kontinenata, sadržavati na izgled nespojive osjećanja pripadnosti, ne biti u jednini već u množini. This sums up what you've just said previously about what is home for you. So your new book that will be published now in Bulgarian, it's actually a group of essays. We translated several of them into Serbian language. And one story that triggers special attention to me is Žuta cigla, as we call it, yellow briquettes, yellow consoles, yes. Kaldrma, how we call it, Žuta kaldrma, actually.
Kalderum.
Yes, in Serbian. And there is a really interesting story about this. Actually, the end of this essay, you changed in the last moment. The very new end of the essay you sent your publisher from Belgrade.
Yeah.
Now, some weeks ago. Can you tell us more about it? And then we will read translation into Serbian, just one part, so we get the attention of the people who are watching us.
Is it working? Yeah. The story with these yellow cobblestones, I guess, is the best translation in English. But yeah, they're these sort of yellow brick-looking things. Is that they're very much of Sofia. You know, and I'll turn this one off. And should we switch or? Yeah, so these yellow cobblestones are in a way symbol of Sofia. If you say somebody was, born on the yellow cobblestones, it means they're really from Sofia. The whole central part of Sofia was, the boulevards were paved in these yellow cobblestones. If you look at pictures of, tourist pictures, views of Sofia, you see these yellow cobblestones. And there's sort of this urban legend floating around that they were gift for Ferdinand, who was, I guess, the last Bulgarian, no, that's not true. Boris is the last Bulgarian king, so his father. They were a gift for his wedding from Austro-Hungarian Empire. And that's, if you ask people from Sofia, they'll tell you that. But then I did some research and actually found out that they weren't a gift, that Bulgaria, or the government of Bulgaria or the municipality of Sofia at the turn of the century ordered them from Austro-Hungarian Empire so that they could pave the center of the city. Because Sofia, unlike Belgrade, I think this is also a big difference that, Belgrade has this, long history as a city. And you can really see that in the buildings. Sofia was just this kind of small Ottoman town, during the Ottoman Empire. And when Bulgaria became independent, it was declared as the capital, but it didn't have paved roads. So very suddenly, I think the rulers of Bulgaria were scrambling to make it look European. So they built a lot of the most beautiful buildings from Sofia from the turn of the century. And these cobblestones, I think, were put into Sofia maybe 1906 to 1908, something like that. And they're really, I don't know, I love them somehow. I think they look so cool, and when I walk on them, I get really, happy every time. Somehow it's like, home, another home, And then, so I wrote that story, part of the book, and then the first day or the day after I got here, I came by the office to say hi, and I was walking, and I don't know if you guys noticed, outside there's a little square garden, or not garden, but little area, and it's paved in these yellow cobblestones just right here outside of the office. And I thought, what's going on? But I mean, it's, of course, it's very surprising, but I had seen these cobblestones in Budapest, and in Budapest, I think a lot of places that were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire just have them as just normal street paving, and I think people don't think about them, don't really notice them. They're just, and I think from what I've researched, I think they don't make them anymore, and they only used to make them in this one factory outside of Budapest, because they use some, I forgot the name of the material, but they use soil somehow, or earth, to make them, and I think this yellow color can only be accomplished from this special soil. So I got here the second day, I saw them, I took a picture, and then I changed. I wrote my publisher. I said, is the manuscript, is it going to print? Can you please change this last second? So there's this edition that I found them here as well.
I will use the opportunity now, if you don't mind, to read in Serbian one chapter of this essay. Iako ne smatram sebe velikim patriotom, pogled na žute cigle uvek me ispuni posebnom radošću, a šetnja njima podsjeća na snažnu vezu koju imam sa rodnom Sofijom. Uvek kada šetam njima, naročito, ako me dugo nije bilo, u glavi mi se pojavi fraza koju je Doroti iz Čarobnjaka iz Oza ponavljala u sebi kao čaroliju koja će je odvesti kući. Ne postoji mesto kao što je dom. Zbog toga me neprekidno sužavanje dela prekrivenog žutim ciglama u centru i mogućnost da žute cigle nestanu iz Sofije potpuno deprimira. Ipak, misao da će kaldarma verovatno još dugo ostati na barem nekoliko mesta širom sveta deluje umirujuće. Prvo takvo mesto pronašla sam kada sam posjetila Agnes u Budimpešti. Šetajući besciljno po gradu, naišli smo na bočni ćor sokak u Budimu. U početku sam imala čudan osjećaj udobnosti i mislila sam da doživljavam neki neobjašnjivi deja vu, ali sljedećeg trenutka primetila sam da je ulica pokrivena pomalo zapuštenim, istrošenim, ali inače apsolutno identičnim sofijskim žutim keramičkim ciglama. Godinama kasnije naišla sam na žutu kaldrmu i u Beogradu. Njom je popločan prostor, nešto između malog trga i dvorišta, ispred kafića u mirnoj i zelenoj zoni, udaljen od centra starog grada. Međutim, za razliku od Sofije, gdje su pločnici raspoređeni u jednom pravcu, ovdje su bili poređeni u složenijem šahovskom obrascu. U svakom slučaju, njihov izgled bio je dovoljan da odgani lagani nalet nostalgije koji sam tog dana osjećala prema Sofiji i da sumorno nebo nad Beogradom izgleda malo svetlije. So how is the sky? Ispostavilo se ipak da postoje druga mesta koja su skoro kao dom. How is the sky today in Belgrade, though?
Right. Yeah, I think it's also an interesting time to come to Belgrade, because when I came here it was so gloomy and rainy and cold the first few days, and I kind of thought, ugh. And I was, I think, feeling a little melancholic maybe. But now I feel very sunny and bright, and I think it matches the weather. Maybe it's a little bit too hot, but yeah, it's great.
I have to ask you something, and I would like you afterwards to read in Bulgarian original several of paragraphs in Bulgarian, so we can actually hear how you write in your own language, even though we will probably not understand anything. But however, you use the Dorothy from Oz. Why do you like her? Why you use her? Do you identify in a way with her rather than Alice in Wonderland?
I really I don't have a special. I mean, of course, I know the story. I think as a child, I've probably read the book. I've seen the American movie, but I don't. It just sort of emerged. It came to me. I think this idea, because in English it's called the yellow brick road, and I think the Bulgarian and whatever pavements are sort of yellow brick roads. Then in the book there's another story about these boots I had made especially for me in Bhutan, And then, as I said earlier, I fall down these rabbit holes of, finding some fact and then digging and digging and digging. And I found out that, these are very traditional boots, and actually only men in Bhutan can wear them. And the current king of Bhutan, when he was stepping into crowned, I guess, coronated, I wanted to say crowned, he was wearing these traditional Bhutanese boots, but then they were made by Salvatore Ferragamo randomly. And I found out, Salvatore Ferragamo made the red ruby slippers of Dorothy in the movie. But then I dug some more, and then it was like, no, this is an urban legend. He didn't make ruby slippers, but he made another pair of shoes for Judy Garland while she was filming Dorothy of Oz, and they're called rainbow shoes. So this, somewhere over the rainbow, again, has to do with the movie. So this, things like keep sort of like lining up in crazy ways. And then there's another story about Christo, the artist, who his last project, that's not true. He did another one afterwards, but one of his more recent project was called the Floating Piers. But they're also like yellow brick. Somehow there's something like very magical and fairy tale about them. And again, it's these bright red, bright orange, yellow pathways that lead to this very green island. So like the Emerald City. So I don't know. I think somehow it like came to me more than, and then I used, I found this quote from the book, and in some way I thought it was a nice thing to say. So to start the book with, so when I guess when Dorothy finds herself, her house is blown to this unknown place. She says, okay, so she locks the house, and then she heads out on her way. And then there were a few roads in front of her, but she easily found the yellow brick road. And with a lot of energy, she started walking towards the Emerald City. But her shoes were ringing happily on the yellow pavement. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. And Dorothy did not feel as bad as you would think a little girl would feel who suddenly finds herself outside of her home and in a foreign land. So I thought, somehow I identified with that, I guess. Sure. If I can just find it. Sorry. От Изео до Ос. Думът е там, където е светът. Като човек прекарал половината си живот на места, различни от това, на което съм родена, за мен темата за дома е особено важна. Това е една от нишките, които, макар и да не съм я развивала нарочно или съзнателно, минават през много от историите в този сборник. Тук има истории, свързани с родния ми град София, където в момента живея, както и с градове, които в различни периоди от живота ми също са били мой дом, като Ню Йорк, Берлин, Монпелие или Айова Сити. Но в книгата се разказва и за много места, на които съм била само веднъж или само за малко, но въпреки това съм усетила близки или пък са ми дали блаженото чувство за дом и усещане за принадлежност. В такива моменти, когато макар и далеч от дома се почувствам на мястото си и силно свързана със света, се сещам за мой любим английски идиом, който изразява това усещане чудесно. The world is my oyster. Преведено буквално, той гласи: светът е моята стрида, но всъщност изразява убеждението, че светът ни принадлежи, че можем да постигнем всичко, което поискаме и да отидем навсякъде, където пожелаем. Дори в най-добрите времена това чувство, разбира се, е илюзорно, но през последната една година стридената черупка чувствително се смали и се затвори плътно. Много от нас се оказаха блокирани вкъщи, както никога досега, и ни се наложи да преразгледаме какво означава за нас домът.
Лично аз осъзнах, че моят дом е дом не само защото се намира на място, където съм родена, а и защото съдържа парченца от много други места по света. Точно усещането да съм заобиколена от всички тези неща, събирани по време на пътувания и носещи спомени за близки и далечни места, любими хора, важни преживявания или маловажни, но забавни случки, всъщност прави дома ми дом. Като парчета от щупен керамичен съд, тези елементи се съединяват в биографията ми и ме правят това, което съм. Историите в тази книга разказват за някои от тези предмети. Повечето от тях, както обещава заглавието, наистина са необикновени. Като например парченцето оранжев плат от плаващите кейове в езерото Изео, словенския звънящ змей, ръчно изработените бутуши от Бутан или сърцето от Сараево. Но дори когато става дума за съвсем обикновени неща, шепа мандарини, прост потник, испански еспадрили или гумени бутуши за дъжд, историите им са това, което ги прави специални. Друга нишка, която преминава през текстовете, е удоволствието от откриването на нещо вълшебно, дори на най-обикновени места. Местата, за които се разказва тук, са съвсем реални, макар че преживяванията ми на много от тях, като Кюстендорф и Катманду, Любляна и Луизиана, Белведере и Билбао, Селчук и Сентрал Парк, са не по-малко приказни от тези на Дороти в страната от Оз. С течение на времето разбрах, че съвсем не е задължително човек да пътува надалеч, за да се почувства като в приказка. В книгата наистина са включени предмети от далечни дестинации, като Ню Мексико, Индия или Япония, но повечето истории разказват за близки места из Европа, Балканите, а дори и за самия покрит с жълти павета център на София. И все пак дори и българските истории всъщност са истории за пътуване. Ако не буквално, както при паветата, то поне езиково, както при потника. Езикът също е място, което се чувствам като свой дом. А думите, подобно на улични павета, ме карат да усещам стабилност под краката си. Повечето истории, включени тук, са писани едва когато започвах да се занимавам с превод сериозно, но интересът ми към различни езици и връзките между тях се появява като още една преминаваща през текстовете нишка. В много от тях, заедно с самите предмети, използвам историята на определена фраза, етимологията на някоя дума или превода на конкретен израз между различни езици като повод да разкажа за важни исторически събития, да се вгледам в културни традиции или да проследя социални, архитектурни, кулинарни, модни, а дори анатомични, ботанически и зоологически процеси. Средите така и не станаха тема за история, но отсъствието им се компенсира от истории за други миди, мандарини и мадлени. Не на последно място, тъй като събира всички тези предмети и разказва техните истории, тази книга също се превръща във вид дом. Представям си читателите като мои гости, на които вместо сладки и кафе, аз предлагам истории за храни и напитки и разни други неща от близки и далечни места. Но освен покана за гостуване, ми се иска книгата да е и покана за пътуване, макар и въображаемо и случващо се от домашното кресло, поне за момента. А когато съвсем истинското пътуване отново стане възможно, се надявам книгата да ни вдъхнови да напуснем креслото и да тръгнем на път. Дори и само за да се уверим, че без значение колко малка или голяма част от света се съдържа в него, няма друго място като у дома.
Thank you so much. So there is no place like home. And home is in you. So home is everywhere. And home is the world, exactly. We don't have much time, but I have so much questions to ask you. And one is, in your story about floating, how do we say, piers, yeah, plutići kevi in Serbian. So you say 49 square centimeters of freedom. And in a lot of in several texts of yours that I've read in your blog and your book and the materials that you've sent me, you use somehow you articulate the term of home, freedom, and then stability again that is important for you. And I have impression that you are always trying to balance between these, and that you are trying to find your home, your freedom, and your stability. not in the places, but as you say, in language, in objects, in places, in people, etc., etc. Am I right? And please do tell me how do you see this that I've just mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I haven't thought about it, but I think, yeah, very much subconsciously, these things are important and they are very much related because, on the one hand, I think, traveling and feeling at home in different places is, very much, what I like, and I love this freedom, and I think I wouldn't feel very good if that, I got to experience it like, all of us in the last year and a half, what it is like to live without that and to feel very restricted. But, on the other hand, I think the last year and a half was an opportunity to have, this sort of, the world was crazy, so it wasn't very stable, but to sort of create this, very stable life of not traveling, of just sitting at home and kind of trying to find, other ways of connecting, other ways of traveling, other ways of, interacting, and sort of this, I think also another conflict, which maybe, not conflict, but, dual thing that is happening of, being alone and being with others. I think that, we all have, and it's a different balance to strike. And I think especially as a writer and a translator, I think that's a very, a tricky thing, because in a way, both writing and translation requires you to spend great amounts of time in isolation at home, just writing on your own. But I think if you're not, I don't know, I guess maybe it depends on what kind of stuff you write about. But I think if you're not in, contact with the world and with other people, I think it would be I would be a terrible writer. I think I would be a terrible translator if I don't listen to, spoken language and, the way people express themselves, or, what they talk about, just walking around the streets, gives me my inspiration. But it's a total, I think, balancing act, I guess.
For the end, or shortly end, I have two questions that I would like to ask you. One is, what do you like or enjoy reading the most? What are you reading at the moment? Is that fiction, non-fiction? And what do you enjoy the most translating, personally?
I think I like equally, I like fiction and nonfiction. I think I just, the last book I read actually was, sometimes I like when I travel, I like reading about places, the place where I'm traveling to or in, which sometimes leads to not great reading choices, like Eat, Pray, Love. It's fine. I don't know. But I was reading because I was sort of trying to do some research for this book. There's one of the stories is about these moleskin notebooks. I don't know if you know the black thing with the elastic. And there's a quote from a writer that I didn't know, Bruce Chatwin. And he wrote a lot of, I think he died in the 90s, but he wrote a lot of sort of nonfiction, travel nonfiction. And he has also this question about like why humans have this undying need to keep moving and keep traveling. So that's, I think, the last full book I read. I love reading essays. I'm trying to think of... I just saw a great list today that I made actually by Rumena Bužarovska, who I think also you're friends with, and she was here maybe on a residency. And her book is listed as, these, I think, books about exile. I'm not going anywhere. Her book, so it's on my list. I think there was a book by Dubravka Ugrešić, again, I don't know where to put the accent, that I also want to read. So I'm making, but I don't know, I have endless lists of books that I want to read and never. And then I have to, keep an eye out on, Bulgarian literature because I translate Bulgarian literature. So I have to always, be thinking of my next project.
Next project, and what is your next stop? after Belgrade?
Actually, Rumena Bužarovska invited me to go to Skopje at the beginning of July, which is also very exciting for me. And I've been there again for one day 20 years ago. So it's, I don't know, 300 kilometers away from Sofia. It's very close. But I haven't been, so I'm excited about that. And then I hope to go to Greece at some point in the summer. Actually, as I was telling you, two of the writers I translate are actually Bulgarian writers who live in Greece randomly. So I want to go to Greece in the summer, and then in the fall, I hope to be able to work at the next project of Christo, who we mentioned with the floating piers. He died unfortunately last summer, but I think in his will he asked that this project be realized, which is the wrapping of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. So I'm hoping that I'll work there in the fall. We'll see. I cross my fingers in English. In Bulgarian, you do this. I don't know. Because I'm speaking in English. You do it like this here. In Bulgarian, it's stiskam palci, which is I'm holding my thumb, actually. So you do it. You actually hold your thumb. And when I speak in English, I do it like this. When I speak in Bulgarian, I do it like this.
We keep fingers crossed for you too. For the end. And you've just mentioned Christoph, and he's obviously important figure for you and his work. You wrote one essay that you've mentioned previously because you obviously like to talk about roads and paths, and that is important for you. Your blog is about paths and feet. Your stories with the Yellowstones about again paths and streets, and then again another essay in your new book is actually the piece of fabric on floating piers that Christoph made in Italy. And I would like you, for the end of this conversation, to tell me more about this experience that you had in Italy and how you research further about his work, which will hopefully end up working together in Paris this year, and read us one paragraph in Bulgarian of this essay.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel a little ridiculous, saying I love him, because it's not, he's so well known. I think, millions of people love him. It's not, my obscure discovery. But I think Bulgarians somehow are like weirdly proud of him, because I think somehow it's not a very known fact that he was born in Bulgaria, and he lived in Bulgaria until his early 20s. He went to art school in Bulgaria. So I think even though, he was totally... the regime did not, of course, like him, and now they want to name streets after him. They issued stamps with his face on it. Yeah, I think Bulgarians are like weirdly proud of him. But I think beyond that, I think it's amazing what he does. I mean, these kind of such monumental projects that, he and Jean-Claude, his wife, who passed away a few years before he did, and they completely transform spaces that I think you very much take for granted, and you think of them as completely sort of static and fixed in what they are, and then they just completely transform them. He wrapped the Reichstag, he wrapped the Pont Neuf in Paris, so these massive structures. And what I find so beautiful about it also, I mean, I think as a creator or whatever of art, sometimes I catch myself being a little bit, precious about my words and like, oh, my, my little books and my objects. And I think what's wonderful about Christo and Jean-Claude is that they make these massive monumental projects, and they're there for 2 weeks and then they disappear. And it's like they never happened, except for, in people's, memories. And, that's something you carry, the memory of that you carry always, but there's no, it's not something that is put in I guess there's work of his that's in a museum, but these monumental things are not, put in a museum or whatever. And I had the chance to actually, I think 2005, he did the gates was the name of the project in Central Park. And again, it was pathways created by these orange structures with these this orange fabric floating around. I think it's, this kind of orange kind of. And then, the floating piers. And then the last project that he did was this sort of pyramid called the mastaba. I don't know, this pyramid in a lake in Hyde Park in London, which I saw from a plane. I was also very excited. And I think, when I see his art, I really get this, totally ecstatic feeling, which, I love art and I love museums, but it's very rare for me to get so excited about something like that. And I guess, what did we say? I'll read. Maybe. Okay, just that paragraph. No, from there until the end. To the end, yeah. На единствената снимка от портите, която все още пазя, освен мен и приятелката, с която отидох, по алеите около нас не се вижда абсолютно никой друг. Помня, че се разхождахме в студа с часове, през които се разминахме само с няколко единични, умотани в шалове и палта посетители. На десетките снимки от тридневните ми разходки по продължението на плаващите кейове е точно обратното. Почти няма кадър, в който да не са попаднали пъплещите, разсъблечени в голямата си част боси тълпи. Като момент на лично мое си блаженство от прекарването ми там ще запомня непосредствено близката гледка към безлюдните кейове от балкона на хотел Виктория на остров Монте Изола през нощта и рано сутринта, преди инсталацията да отвори за посетители. Имайки предвид тези малко или много повърхностни разлики, двете инсталации все пак споделят и редица съществени прилики. Ключов сред тях е свободният им и независим дух. От една страна портите и плаващите кейове, както на практика и всички останали големи проекти на Кристо и Жан-Клод, очевидно зависят от редица фактори. От получаването на административни разрешения, през съобразяването с специфичните характеристики на терена и метеорологичните условия по време на краткото им съществуване. И двете инсталации продължат точно по 16 дни. До труда на стотиците хора, нужни... Poor cat, I'm sorry. На стотиците хора, нужни за реализацията им, и милионите гости, които ги посещават и си взаимодействат с тях. Въпреки тези фактори, обаче, идеята за артистична и интелектуална независимост е заложена дълбоко в основата на всички техни проекти. Това е видимо както на ниво концепция, така и в самата реализация. От отказа им на каквито и да било външни източници на финансиране, включително и всякакви частни спонсори, държавни фондове за изкуство, дори и приходи от продажбата на билети, до ефимерността на инсталациите, които според самия Кристо, като противоположност на перманентността и собствеността, също е тясно свързана с свободата.
Thank you so much. With this, I would like to finalize our conversation and invite everyone to follow your work, to read your book when new one, the one that we presented today, when it comes out in Bulgarian and hopefully in Serbian too. And for the end, also would like to thank you for coming to Belgrade and being our guest, and to wish you all good luck with the further trips and writings.
Just thank you so much. I loved talking to you. I hope people enjoyed the conversation. I just as sort of last words, I was thinking that at first I was a little bit worried about presenting this book that it hasn't come out yet, but it'll it's supposed to come out by the end of the month. I think there's going to be a delay, but it's coming out. And I thought it's a bit weird that the book is in Bulgarian, it's coming out in Bulgarian, but I thought it's kind of perfect and so fitting for this book that the first time I talk about it publicly happens outside of Bulgaria. It's sort of through translation again. I'm talking about it in English. You read an excerpt of it in Serbian. I think it's sort of great and fitting that this is kind of the start of this book's life, is in this multilingual and across borders way. Thank you.
Dok s nestrpljenjem čekamo prevod nove knjige Ekaterine Petrove, predstavit ćemo Krokodilovo novo izdanje. Filip David i Rada Iveković razgovarat će sa Igorom Štiksom o 8. zajedničkoj čitaonici.